And I have on my computer 10:02. So, Mr. Chair, I believe we can begin.
Thank you. The meeting of the Board of Directors of the Department of Youth Services is hereby called to order. Today is September 25th, approximately 10:02. Mr. Perry, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I think I have an idea of who's present, but I'm going to call the roll, and I will ask everyone to go ahead and unmute your microphones now. And when I call your name, please audibly respond. That's a technical requirement of these Zoom meetings. So, Ms. Shay Cobb England.
Present.
Bill Babington.
I'm present.
Tim Hammett. Bob Duke.
Here.
Jamie Durham.
Present.
Senator Coleman Madison. Representative Brown. James Dupree.
Present.
Charles Smith.
Here.
Stacy Jenkins.
Here.
Bill McDowell.
Here.
Buddy Idolette.
Here.
Judge Maston.
Here.
Kay Bell.
Here.
Are there any voting members of the board whose name I did not call who are present? Okay, so Jonathan Hester, are you here?
I am.
Thank you, sir. The governor's, our ex officio chairman's representative is here also. So as the meeting progresses, please remember when you speak to unmute your microphone. Go ahead and mute yourselves now. When you speak during the meeting, the computer will highlight your face, and or the box for your face will be, it'll indicate that you're speaking. So if you want to discuss a matter or make a motion or a second, remember to unmute yourself. But as for now, please, please mute yourselves now. Representative Brown, are you here?
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
I think Senator Barfoot just joined us, and I would be curious how you want to handle should any other board member join us in the course of the next few minutes as we get started. How do you want to handle that?
It's one of the technical difficulties. Phyllis is monitoring. That's Phyllis who's been asking these questions about who's here, because she's watching the participants list on the side, and she keeps a record of who comes and goes during each meeting. And we're attempting to do that by the use of this technology with that list on the side. So.
And Dudley, this is Will Barfoot. I am here, and I thank y'all for, sorry for being a few minutes behind.
No worries. Thank you, sir. Okay, so let's talk about the voting procedures. We're going to follow procedures similar to the procedures we followed at the last meeting. If you weren't here, basically, matters coming from committees, customarily at this board, we assume a motion and a second. For all action items, the way we're going to handle it, instead of going through a roll call with this huge group, where the chairman will call for discussion. He'll ask if there are any objections, and he'll ask for any abstentions. If it appears that the matter is non-controversial, meaning that there are not any objections, then to save time, we're not going to do a roll call. The matter will be adopted. Now, matters that if there are any unanimous items, meaning someone abstains or objects. If you intend to vote no, then please speak up audibly when the chairman asks for objections. And remember to identify yourself, please. If you abstain, your vote will not be counted and it won't be a unanimous matter. So are there any questions about the procedures that we'll follow in this meeting?
No, sir.
So, Mr. Chairman, you have a
Mr. Mayor?
quorum. Yes, go ahead.
I just left one thing out here. Of course, this is being recorded and it will be made available to the public as well.
Thank you. Very good. So, Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum and you can proceed.
Thank you. Directors, you have before you been provided a copy of the June 12th, 2020 minutes, and this is a ratification of our minutes here. Are there any correction to the minutes? Are there any objection to approve of the minutes? Hearing none objection, the minutes are hereby approved. Now the chairman recognizes the executive director for his report. Mr. Lafreniere.
You're muted.
Very good. All right. Thank you. Bear with me now. My apologies. When I went back to that screen, I lost my notes. 1 second, please. Got them. Very good. My apologies. Welcome, everybody. Good to see everybody, even if it is virtual. And it looks like we nearly have a full complement of the board today. And so I'm very pleased with that, and good to see everybody. Welcome to Senator Barfoot and Jonathan Hester. Always good to have the legislature and the governor's office represented as well with our other board members. I hope you all had a chance. We were a little concerned when I sent out the board packet information that it went smoothly. It seems I always have an issue with the Alicourt email addresses, and I thought we had that worked out. So my apologies. It seems there's an additional step we have to go through in order to get things through the AOC's email. And so I'm hoping that wasn't too burdensome, and I appreciate you offering your personal email so that we could ensure that we get this information to you all. And again, part of that information this time included our monthly newsletters that we send out, and we choose to share that with the board because I think it can hopefully give a little bit of quick glimpse of some of the things going on so that we don't have to spend too much time in a board meeting updating on a number of initiatives and things we have going on. You may have been used to seeing the newsletter entitled PBS, which is our quality assurance title that used to be our newsletter. And a few months back, we decided to just make it a monthly newsletter, which would include our quality assurance information and along with other information that's helpful to communicate with our staff. So hopefully you'll find that information interesting and informative about things going on with DYS. We also take an opportunity to try to identify and recognize the staff that work here and do such a fine job. One of the other things I do want to bring your attention to is that we continue to stick our toe in the social media platforms of the world, and so actually DYS has a spot on LinkedIn now. And so if you are following, if you are a LinkedIn subscriber and wanted to follow DYS, we'll be putting information on that about job opportunities as well as information about juvenile justice and the department as well. So just wanted to bring your attention to that. I think that information is located on the September newsletter, which we actually sent out just this morning, an updated copy, because we realized there was a typo in the previous one that I may have sent out. So my apologies on that. I did want to update the board and I know everybody is probably tired of hearing because we hear it every single day on the news, but some of our efforts to manage the effects of the pandemic and keeping the health of our students and staff a priority for us. You know, the staffing of our facilities remains our primary challenge as we go through this, and our efforts to try to prevent the spread of COVID on our campuses. I think we've done a very good job, and I'm hoping that these efforts to prevent COVID will also help us as we enter the flu season as well, because that has the potential to compound some of the issues that we're facing. I do want to share with the board a little bit of the impact and how the testing and the number of positive cases that we've had. And so I'd ask Ms. Allen this time if you'd share the first slide with the board. This quick slide just shows the extent to which we have tested within DYS testing procedures, not individuals who may have tested on the outside as far as the blue line is concerned. So it appears we've tested over 450 staff and students probably since April, I think, is when we received the testing machine. And so, and of that, for the DYS staff, of the 240 tested, 26 staff were positive. And of the DYS youth that have been tested, we have tested 216 youth over that time. And again, we're testing kids as they come into us as well. So every intake is included in that, as well as any child who may be COVID suspected or symptomatic will also test. And out of the 216, 11 had tested positive. And so we think we're doing a pretty good job in a congregate care setting that we're operating. Each time this happens, though, it tests us to make sure that our plans and our protocols are in place to respond and to try to minimize any effects of either a staff who is reported being positive or has tested positive, or a student for that matter. Just another aspect to this impact that we're having, and I asked our HR department to kind of calculate in man hours, pardon the gender specific term, how many hours does this equate to? And so for the extended personal sick leave hours that were awarded as a result of all this testing. So, you know, they have to be away until we find out if they're positive or negative. They have to, you know, quarantine. Sometimes if they have had contact with somebody outside of the work environment, they'll report they've been in contact with somebody, and so they maybe need to be quarantined as well. When you add up all the employees that have taken advantage of the extended sick leave policies given through the CARES Act, that equates to 104 employees since COVID began in March. And so that represents about 1/4 of our total workforce population. And that means, or out of those 104 employees, that equates to 5,300 hours of work time. And so I just want to kind of give a sense of what the impact has been during these few months. And so if you break that down into 8-hour shifts, it's 662 8-hour shifts that we needed to account for during that time. That kind of think I illustrates for us the challenge of having to, especially on the campuses when this affects employees on our campus, having to backfill these positions in order to maintain ratios and safety. And so 66% of the 104 employees, or not 104 employees, so yeah, I'm sorry, 66% of those employees were frontline staff. And that accounted for 439 8-hour shifts that we need to make up for. The challenge is, and hats off to Ms. Lewis and her staff with institutional services, this is a daily occurrence of having to find and fill shifts because our staff are out from time to time. But I just wanted to kind of outline what that impact means. for HR, who is providing information to our employees and about what they need to do, when they can come back, and how to handle being out for any particular period of time. But the institutions who are trying to backfill either through overtime or by hook and crook of how we can kind of get that done. I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of an example of that, the total impact that we've kind of worked through during this time as well. So very proud of the staff on institutional services. So that's 34% then of those staff are either central office or other positions on the campus, teachers, specialists, other case managers, other positions that that don't necessarily contribute to the student ratio count, but are still important positions to be missing 8 hours a day. And so I just wanted to kind of give that information to the board as well. Ms. Allen, if you put the second slide up, during this time, one of the advantages I think that we've been able to deal with when we're struggling with having the staff available is the fact that the census has come down as well. If you look, and this is a weekly census report for the department from the middle of March when COVID began until last week. And what you can see is it appears that around mid-July was our lowest census that we've had. It came down precipitously, and I think that represents about 34% reduction in admissions and average daily census until mid-July. But you can see now that it's starting to go back up, and I anticipate that that will continue to rise, especially as courts come back into full session, schools are getting back into session, and then also we have begun to intake youth who are also waiting at home. Prior to this time, prior to September, we were bringing in kids who were in the detention centers, who we could have some reasonable assurance that they were not positive, that they had health checks prior to getting to us. But we have put in some additional protocols to test the kids who are at home now. And so we also think that that will contribute to the numbers of kids that we're able to bring in as well. So just wanted to kind of give the board a quick snapshot of the impact. We are doing well, we're managing it, and hopefully that we will continue to do so as the months go by. Part of the way in which we manage that is we have developed, as you're aware of, and have received an alternative standard of care plan, which puts into place processes and strategies in order to prevent and respond to the coronavirus, on our campus or trying to keep it off of our campuses. And we continue to modify these operations. And thank you, Ms. Allen. That's, if you actually want to see the real numbers of our average daily census, that second slide is there. And so I appreciate you showing that, Ms. Allen. But the alternative plan, standard of care, which the board had received, I believe it was sent out from Mr. Perry's office a week, 10 days ago for your review, shows the updates of that plan. It's a living document, and as health information becomes available to us, as we decide to modify our operations, like the resumption of school, all those things make sometimes tweaking the plan, adjusting the plan, taking new steps. And this plan is in place to give us guidance as to how we're going to provide our services in the midst of this pandemic. Normally, the board approves our policy manual, which is the document that drives what we do every day. During the COVID time, the pandemic, we have this alternative standard of care plan, which helps give us guidance about how we're going to operate during this time, because sometimes some of the things that we're doing are not congruent with what the policy says. For an example, would be visitation. Visitation is a policy that kids have the ability to have visitation, and of course during the pandemic we have stopped in-person visitation, but we've modified how to provide that service through technology. And so they have that. That's one example of that. But you had received a updated version because in the June meeting, the board was able to approve our alternative standard of care. And each board meeting, as we progress through this pandemic, if there are any updates or changes, we want to present those to the board for their approval as well. And so I wanted to pause here and ask if the board had any questions about the updates to the standard of care that you received earlier from Mr. Perry. Okay. Hearing no questions, then I would, Mr. Chair, if it pleases the board, I would ask if you could seek a motion to approve these updates for the alternative standard of care.
All right, you have heard the director request for a motion to ratify and approve the agency emergency response plan and alternative standard of care. Do I hear a motion?
Bill McDowell, so moved.
Okay. All right, is there a second?
Bob Biggs,
Thank you. Discussions? Are there any abstentions? Are there any objections? If none, the motion is approved. Thank you. Ms. Lafayette, continue, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to update the board on where we are with our construction project. The final plans for that project have been submitted to the Building Commission for approval, and we should hear back any day from them. It's quite common for the commission to have maybe questions or comments on the plans that the design architects will address. As soon as those plans are approved, we will seek an invitation to bid for the general contractor. We anticipate that that will happen within the next month, and hopefully we'll be on schedule to begin construction of the school renovation of Wallace School, the intensive treatment unit, the new intensive treatment unit, as well as a treatment building for offices for case managers and counselors and therapists. Those are the three projects that were approved by the board, and it's our hope that we'll begin construction in January on that. This fall, we are engaged in trying to identify every square foot that's available for moving staff and personal property, that not personal property, but state property that needs to be moved out of the school during this renovation time. And so that space will be at a premium, but we are in the midst of beginning to identify that space, moving into that alternative space during construction. And this week we met with the architect design firm, a number of the senior staff met with them, and we selected the interior and exterior finishes. It's really exciting to see us at this point right now, and I think the board will be very pleased with how this will look, how the new renovations of the school, as well as the new buildings will look, and look forward to be able to sharing this with the board as this progresses. And so we're real excited about the construction. Any questions about that? Okay. Mr. Chair, I know the DYS Policy Committee has had an opportunity to meet and discuss some, they were actually presented some policy updates, as well as I believe a new policy was introduced for their consideration. And so at this time, I would like to recognize Ms. Allen to brief the board on the DYS Policy Committee's discussion, and if it pleases the board, to seek an approval of the policy updates.
The chair will recognize Ms. Allen to give the Policy and Procedure Committee report. Ms. Allen?
Thank you, Chairman Smith, and to the members of the board. The DYS Board Policy Subcommittee convened September the 18th at 10 a.m. via Zoom. 4 policies were presented for review. DYS Policy 3.7.1, which is electronic devices and social media. This is a new policy, and it includes a supplemental documentation titled the Social Media Policy Agreement. DYS Policy 9.7.1, use of restraints, and DYS Policy 9.9, incident and incident reporting. Both of these policies had minor modifications to add new definitions and also to make small cosmetic changes that would help the policy to align with organizational change. And then the other policy is DYS Policy 12.10, which is communicable and infectious disease management. There were definitions added to this particular policy to account for the current times that we're in. And by virtue of all of these policies being submitted and reviewed and updated, it would also necessitate a change or update really to our glossary, which is also part of our policy and procedure manual. So, Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would believe that it would be appropriate to entertain a recommendation out of the DYS Board Subcommittee, Policy Subcommittee, regarding the adoption of the amendments and additions to the DYS Policy and Procedure Manual.
You've heard Ms. Allen request regarding the policy manual. Do I hear a motion to amend the policy and procedures?
Mr. Chairman, this is James Dupree. I would make that motion.
Mr. Priest, motion. Do I have a second?
It's K.L. Brown. I second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussions? Are there any abstentions? Are there any objections? If none, the motion is approved. Thank you. Mr. Lafner, anything else on the director's report?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Smith. As part of my director's report, I would like to insert divisional briefings from each of the divisions. And so at this time, I would like to invite Mr. Rogers from the Administration Services Division to report to the board.
All right, the chair recognizes Mr. Rogers to give the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Each of you should have received the full operations plan budget in the Zoom invitation that was sent out by Mr. Lafreniere. Today, I just want to go over a summary of that rather than going through all the 24 pages of that document. So what you have in front of you is a summary of that operations plan by object code, and it compares it to the 2020 operation plan, the one we're currently in. So I will tell you that all lines under that 2020 operation plan are the budgeted lines. We're still paying for expenditures and will be for probably the next month and a half. But I did go ahead and update the first 3 lines, the number of employees and the personnel and employee benefits lines, or the actual, because we should be through with those expenditures. The first line, we ended the year with 428 employees. Our operation plan for next year has 481 employees, so that's an increase of 53. Our personnel cost, we expended $19.4 million. We've got budgeted $20.8 million, which is an increase of $1.4 million. Our benefits, we've got budgeted for next year at $8.9, which is an increase of $627,000. In-state travel, budgeted $68,000, which is an increase of $5,800. Out-of-state travel, budgeted $34,000, which is an increase of $7,000. Repairs and maintenance, 1.9 million, which is a decrease of 260,000. Rentals and leases, 296,000 budgeted, which is an increase of 21,000. Utilities is 1.9 million budgeted, decrease of 24,800. Professional services budgeted 17.6, which is an increase of 2.4. And I'll explain a little bit of why that jump is that we did a new RFP cycle. The bids that came back, or the showed an increase in the rates, as well as we're going to now guarantee 75% of the contract cost. We were having issues, especially during COVID times when we had a lot of empty bids, and that created a huge problem for the contractors and keeping staffing levels. So we had to institute this new way of doing things, which is guaranteeing 75% of the contract cost. Supplies is 3.1 million, which is a decrease of 267,000. Transportation equipment operations, 436,000, which is an increase of 72,000. Grants and benefits, 49.6 million, which is an increase of 4.3 million. Most of that is Medicaid, and that may or may not materialize. So if the contractors or the providers bill for Medicaid eligible services and those monies come to us, then we pay it directly back to the providers dollar for dollar. So the expense only goes up if the money comes in. So like I said, that may or may not happen. It's just a placeholder in case it does. Capital outlay, Mr. Lafreniere spoke of the building project on the Mount Meigs campus. We're adding $6 million to help fund that. Transportation equipment purchases, 290,000, which is an increase of 200,000. That's to replace some of the older vehicles that are on our campuses. Equipment, 1.3 million, which is a decrease of 405,000. All that together, all line items, is our total budget's 112 million, which is an increase of 14.1. General fund was level funded. Education trust fund was level funded. All of that increase is under special revenue. And again, that is, half of that is the construction cost, and the other major portion of that is Medicaid that may or may not materialize. So are there any questions on any of that? Mr. Chairman, the committee unanimously voted this morning to recommend to the board the approval of the operation plan. Now, Mr. Chairman, the recommendation comes from the committee. So would you please call for a discussion and a vote on the committee's recommendation?
You heard the recommendation coming out of committee this morning, Finance Committee this morning, to approve the operation plan. Is there any discussions? Are there any abstention? Are there any objection?
Mr. Chairman, this is James Dupree. I would like to abstain.
Okay, Mr. Dupree abstain. Any other? If not, the motion is approved. All right, Mr. Rogers.
First of all, I want to thank LaTanya Bowman and Chantrice Ellis for their work on this. That's a tremendous amount of work that goes into that document that I stand up here and present to y'all, but they're the ones doing the work and doing a fantastic job with it. So I wanted to recognize them and their work. The next item, the committee discussed this morning and unanimously voted to recommend to the board with the approval of $11,500 transfer from the Land Rental Receipts Fund to the Student Benefit Fund. We do this each year. It's to pay for holiday celebrations, gifts for the students, students awards, snack shack inventory, and student recreational items. These funds are for the Mount Meigs campus. The source of this funding is the Dow plant that's located behind the Mount Meigs campus. Now, Mr. Chairman, the recommendation comes from the committee, so would you please call for discussion and a vote on the committee's recommendation to transfer $11,500.
You heard the recommendation coming from the Finance Committee to approve the transfer of funds to the Student Benefit Fund. If there are any discussions? Are there any abstentions?
Mr. Chairman, this is James Dupree. I abstain.
Mr. Dupree, are there any objections? If no further, the motion is approved. Thank you. Mr. Rogers, is there anything else from the Finance Committee?
Yes, sir. I wanted to update the entire board on several personnel items and COVID-related items. First of all, the $500 incentive bonus that we instituted, I guess it started back in April. No, sorry, it was April, May, and June, the first quarter. We gave $500 incentive bonus to help with the retention of our frontline staff. The ones that were eligible for this were youth service aides and senior aides. They had to, in order to be eligible, they had to have had no unexcused absences, a maximum of 7 tardies, and no formal disciplinary actions. August 15th, we paid out the first one of those checks. It was for April, May, and June. We paid out a total of $38,000, and 77 staff members received that. There were 175 that were eligible or could have been eligible, and that means we paid out about 44% of those staff received that bonus. Next, I wanted to update you on the supplemental pay that we put into place for during COVID, during the early months of COVID. We got approval from the State Personnel Board to pay an additional $2.50 to the direct care staff. That was in effect from April 11th through July 31st. We paid out a total of $220,000 to those staff. That is no longer in effect. We put that into place when we thought COVID was just going to last a couple of months. And so we realized that we weren't going to be able to continue to do that. So we do have in place now just that same $2.50 for the staff that have been assigned to isolation dorms. So they're the only ones that would be eligible now. COVID reimbursements through the CARES Act, through the Comptroller's Office. We've received for PPE supplies and other PPE or COVID-related equipment. To date, we've received $52,000 in reimbursements, and we've submitted and are awaiting reimbursement for another $48,000. Again, that's just for supplies and equipment. Some other sources of COVID-related funding that we now have or will have come October 1, hopefully. The first one is through ADECA, the Department of Justice has provided us with, we're thinking it'd be around $500,000 mark. It's pending the governor's approval, so we hadn't seen the final document yet, but that'll be to reimburse for PPE supplies. The detention centers and the community providers, community programs will have access to that through us. They will place their order with us, and then we'll find the PPE supplies and have it shipped to the provider, and then we'll seek reimbursement through ADECA. The device grant through the Department of Education is another $129,000, which will pay for wireless access and laptops for students. The wellness grant through the Department of Education is $90,000 for PPE for students and for teachers. And the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Grant through the Department of Education for $17,000 that will be used for technology equipment. Mr. Chairman, that completes my report unless there's some questions.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Rogers? Directors.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a continuation of my report, I call on Mr. Pat Pendergast to give a report from the Community Services Division.
All right. The chair recognizes Mr. Pat Pendergast, Deputy Director of Community Service. Mr. Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, good morning, and thank you for allowing me to present today. I'm pleased to report that aside from close monitoring and assistance we provide to our partners and programs, our private provider contracts for the next 3-year cycle have gone before contract review and have been signed by the governor. We will engage the same providers as the last cycle, with the exception of the bridge. We had 6 categories of programs this time, and 11 programs were awarded. Our diversion grants are resuming for another year. The agreements for those have been sent out to the local programs to sign. 59 out of 67 counties now have some connection to a diversion program. 2 more are in the planning stages. Our diversion grants have continued to thrive despite the challenges of the moment, some with more enthusiasm than before COVID. Families are very grateful to have these services still available, and most of them are being done by FaceTime and Zoom and things of this nature. They made a lot of modifications to that over the past 6 months. We got feedback from our diversion grants in 2 surveys that we took over the past 6 to 8 months. And our monitors have resumed their site visits, and we sent progress reports out to the grantees and the courts, letting them know how everyone fared during the last 6 months. It's been mentioned that the detention centers were checking on our kids and holding the kids for a 14-day quarantine period, and they worked well with our staff, sending us temperature checks and helping us to screen prior to entering the DYS programs. We had a couple of personnel changes in community services and licensing through retirements. We also had a change in our service monitor. Someone was promoted to the YSI position formerly held by April Jones, who we will sorely miss. But we have found a very good replacement for her. And we are looking at filling those 3 vacancies here in the near future. Unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lafreniere, anything else from?
Yes, Mr. Chair, can I call on Ms. Janice Lewis to give a institutional report to the board?
Okay. All right, the chair recognizes Janice Lewis, Deputy Director, Institutional Services. Ms. Lewis.
You're on mute.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Lafreniere. To Chairman Smith, our esteemed board members, administrators, and to our guests, I am happy to report that all is well in institutional services. We continue to work on improving services to our youth, staff recruitment and retention efforts, reducing turnover, and updating the COVID response plan as CDC guidelines change. We remind our staff of services offered by the Employee Assistance Program, EAP, and show support to our employees struggling with COVID-related issues. This includes offering flexible work hours to facilitate work-life balances, remote work. We have recognized and celebrated our direct care staff, our nurses, and our campus administrators for doing good work during a very stressful time. Sound familiar? We recognize that we are not alone in this posture, and we appreciate this governing body's continued support. As numerous juvenile justice systems have done, we took a long look at the type of behavioral management intervention used in de-escalating and restraining aggressive youth. We have trained heavily using controlled force tactics, a corrections intervention model. However, as our population has evolved, so have our needs in behavior intervention. After convening a multi-discipline committee, we were able to view 3 alternative interventions offering the least restrictive methods of force used in restraining juveniles. This included an opportunity for our master trainer, Officer Antonio Howard, to attend a virtual audit training. Thanks to Ms. Melody Nelson, our training director, for assisting us in this endeavor. I look forward to updating the board in the very near future as to our final decision. As always, thank you for your support of institutional services. This ends my report.
Lafreniere, is from the director.
If there's no questions, then that will end my report today, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The board will now go into and continue as the district school board and recognize for the education committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to everyone. We have a few action items and we'll start with personnel. I'm going to read all of the names, but you can refer to information that was in your packet for the attachments or appendices. And so the committee requests that the board accept the resignation of Shanice Williams from the Wallace School, Appendix A. Accept the resignation of Lenoise Ritchie from the McNeil School, Appendix B. Accept the resignation of Lynthia Edwards from the McNeil School, Appendix C. Accept the recommendation to hire Dr. DeMarcus Gates as principal for the Wallace School, Appendix D. Accept the recommendation to hire Frederick Lowry as a history teacher for the Wallace School, Appendix E. Accept the recommendation to reassign Shalonda Lamar from a history teacher to student support counselor for the Wallace School, Appendix F. Accept the recommendation to hire Franklin Reeves as a business teacher for the McNeil School, Appendix G. Accept the recommendation to hire Charles Bowden as a physical education teacher for the McNeil School, Appendix H. And accept the recommendation to hire Michael Muncher as a music teacher for the McNeil School, Appendix I. Mr. Chairman, I request that you call for discussion, and if there are no objections, call for a vote on all 9 together.
You heard the recommendation coming from the Education Committee. Are there any objection to considering all 9 personnel recommendation together? This recommendation is coming out of committee. Is there any discussions? Are there any abstentions? Are there any objections? Hearing none, the matter is approved. Dr. Richardson?
Okay. At this time, the committee would like to request that the board approve the minutes from the June 12th, 2020 Education Committee meeting, which is Appendix J.
Directors, you have received a copy of the minutes in advance. So this is the June 12, 2020 Education. Are there any the minutes? If correction, by approved. Dr. Richardson.
Yes, okay. I'd like to take just a few minutes, Mr. Chair, just to update the board on a few non-action items. As you all are aware, back in the spring, approximately March, middle of March, our schools were suspended, basically closed down due to COVID. I'm happy to announce that as of September the 8th, all of our schools are back online, and we're excited about it. Our faculty and staff are excited about it, but most importantly, our students are excited to have some semblance of normalcy, being brought back to them by being able to attend school. Across all 3 campuses, we're currently operating with a Monday through Thursday instructional day, with Fridays being set aside for teacher preparation and internal training. As you can imagine, bringing schools back online in the midst of this pandemic, it took a lot of planning and preparation. And I'd just like to thank everyone from the campus administrators to, the director and everyone who worked together to put together a plan that was workable across all of our campuses. Each of those campuses look different. They have different considerations, but working together collaboratively, we were able to create and implement a plan that works for all of our various campuses. Just so that we had to work within some of the same guidelines as many of the traditional districts. And so we put in measures such as requiring mandatory face coverings for both our teachers and our students. We put in place the social distancing, and we made our best efforts to space our desks 6 feet apart, which allowed for our students to be in class without putting themselves in a position where they felt as though they were uncomfortable with being back in the classroom. And so that was put in place. Additionally, we purchased things like the hand sanitizer so that we could ensure that students and staff have access to those solutions to keep their hands clean. And at this point in time, this is I think concludes our second week. I'm extremely proud of where we are. We've had to make some tweaks, but again, we are back online. I want to take just a minute. I don't know, I'm excited about one of our new employees, Dr. DeMarcus Gates, who is the new principal at Wallace School. Dr. Gates, are you online? If you would, if you could just unmute yourself and tell everyone hello.
He's not here.
Okay, all right. But anyway, we're excited about Dr. Gates and what he brings to the table for us. We're excited about where we're going to go with Wallace School under his leadership. Next, I'd like to just update the board. I think we mentioned previously about our plans for our GED program. I'm happy to announce that once we started school back, we were able to pull out that program, and we now house it in our CTE complex, which gives us the opportunity to be focused and intentional about helping as many of those young men who are part of the GED program successfully get their GED. And so we're looking forward to continue to work and help these young men. We've assigned 2 teachers to work in that program, and we're looking forward again to just taking our GED program to the next level. Kind of along that same vein, in our planning, one of our biggest challenges was our Wallace School, which has our largest population. And as we were preparing to bring school back online, in the short term, we were also thinking about the fact that we were going to be losing our Wallace School, our main building, during renovation. And so thanks to the director and Mr. Rogers, we were able to repurpose a couple of rooms in our career tech complex where we were able to accommodate some additional classrooms and help with, kind of putting things in place for our planning. Once we come to the Christmas holidays, we will no longer have access to the Wallace School. And so at this point in time, we've actually moved our teaching staff to our dormitories so that they can deliver instruction to our students. As a part of that process, we are currently in the midst of putting in place wireless access. And so it has taken a lot to make this happen. But again, I'm excited and extremely grateful for all the efforts that have gone into the continuity of our academic programming for our students. And so we'll be in this posture for the next 18, 24 months. But at this point in time, the transition has gone very well. Hadn't had any teachers to resign, so they seem to be on board with the changes. Additionally, I'd like to share with you, just as a part of planning for this transition, we received some funding, and we were able to purchase some additional technology. Right now, we purchased approximately 300 new laptops, which is a huge milestone for us. This gives us the opportunity to have a one-to-one initiative where every student that's in our care will have a laptop. And so we're excited about that. And so as you can imagine, a lot of young people, they're accustomed to using the technology, and we're very happy that we now will be able to offer them those laptops during their instructional hours. I think I mentioned we are installing wireless in the dorms so that they can have wireless capabilities. And the last thing, a couple more things. This year, due to COVID, we will not have our writing our stories in the traditional format. However, we're going to go with the flow. And so this year is going to be a virtual event. And that's going to be scheduled for November the 13th. I'm sure in the next week or so, Dr. Smitherman will be sending out an invitation, and we'd love to have all of you all join us for our Writing Our Stories program. And last, I'm going to leave on a positive note. As you've heard me share previously, some of these students probably would not be in school if they were not in our care. And, sometimes we get some really good students. And so, and I'd like to just share a very positive story with everyone so that you understand that the work that we do is not in vain. We have a young man who has been with us for a while, will be with us for a little while longer, but I'd like to share with you that as of this semester, we have a student that has enrolled in college who's now on the path to earning college credits while he's with us. And so we're excited to be able to just be a part of that. So hopefully that once he completes his time with us, he'll be back on a path to success and wherever it is that he sees himself being a few years from now. Mr. Chairman, at this point, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Richardson. Is there any other business for the school board? There being no more business for the school board, the D-West School Board will now adjourn. The D-West Board will return from recess and continue to meet at the Alabama Youth Service businesses. Is there any other business board at this time?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I may, at this time I would like to present the DYS Employee of the Quarter to the board. And I believe Ms. Allen is going to place a picture of Mr. Samuel Rowe up for everybody. Like to thank Ms. Dorn, our chair of the Employee Council, and all the representatives of the Employee Council who do such a fine job in taking the nominations and looking at who is deserving and making that selection. So just real briefly, that Mr. Rowe, from the write-up that I was given about him, a number of words that I've highlighted pop out about being a positive role model, almost a father figure or uncle figure to the boys on Mount Meigs. He works in Pfeiffer A, which is some of our more challenging young men are in that dorm. And so to be such a positive force, not only for the young people, but also as a co-worker, with his co-workers being a strong co-worker is a tremendous thing. As a matter of fact, I went yesterday to present him with the governor's proclamation and the employee pen and express our appreciation on behalf of the board to him. And the plan was to meet him at 3:45. His shift begins at 4, so I was going to meet him at the front gate at 4:45. And when I went, I see that he already signed in 5 minutes ahead of me. So I can see why he's well liked as an employee, because when you show up even early to your shift and your coworkers aren't waiting on you, that's a strong work ethic, and we appreciate. And I understand that wasn't unusual, that he does show up on time and early, and that actually says a lot in this day and age as well. So Mr. Samuel Rowe is deserving of our Employee of the Quarter this year, and I wanted to present that to the board. So hopefully we'll have an opportunity to have these employees present the next time we have an opportunity to gather as a board and get to see them in person and say hello. So some of them, though, are quite happy not getting up in front of you. I guess you all are a pretty intimidating group, and so I told him he didn't have to wear his Sunday best and have anything to say. I think he looked a little relieved on that, but we'll get him up there, though, and have you get a chance to meet him. So thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes the Employee of the Quarter presentation.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, advisory board reports. Are there any reports from the advisory board? Mr. Betty.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
This is Mr. Idlett for VACA. Yeah, I would like to just report real quick to the board. The VACA board met on September 10th via Zoom also, and was our first time to get together. The June meeting was canceled. But just to update, Regions came and did the financial Regions Trust oversees the VACA board's portfolio, gave us an update on that, approved budgets, and made sure that our spending levels are where they need to be. Basically on campus activity, because of the restrictions on group size and things like that, there was not a lot to report from that standpoint, as far as July 4th picnics and things like that. Things have had to move to kind of smaller. We understand they're doing more birthday celebrations in the units like that, and doing movie nights or extra meals, something like that, for the students and everything. That being said, the annual Christmas party for VACA is scheduled to go on as usual. It is planned for December the 10th at 6 p.m. I don't have particulars on that right now, but as they become, I'll be glad to get that. I mean, again, it's hard to plan things that far down the road, but that being said, that date has been chosen. Like to thank Ms. Lewis. She was on that call. Anything she would like to add?
Yes, I would personally like to thank you, Mr. Idlett, for what you bring to the table, your steadfast leadership and working with the VACA facility. It is noteworthy, and I want you to know that we appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
That ends my report.
Sir. Ms. Lewis, you have anything else? So that was it.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, sir. I would like to report for the other two boards very briefly. We have been challenged, as you just heard Mr. Adelette report. However, we are moving forward as much as we can during COVID. I would like to give you an update first on the Autauga campus. Our president there is Mr. Robert Harris. We did not receive an update. However, I am aware that we have experienced significant turnover within the advisory board at Autauga, with several persons that have diligently worked with us over the years now facing limitations that prevent regular attendance physically or remotely. We will persevere and keep you updated as we solicit new members in that area. The Mount Meigs Campus Advisory has a new president. His name is Dr. Stephen Carmody, C-A-R-M-O-D-Y, and I hope I am pronouncing it correctly. He is the Associate Professor of Anthropology with Troy University. Dr. Carmody and his Troy University colleagues have collected over 400 stamps and envelopes to assist in holiday greetings from our children to their families. This board continues to meet monthly via Zoom, and I look forward to introducing Dr. Stephen Carmody to you at a later date. This ends the advisory board reports.
Thank you. All right. Is there any other business to come before the board at this time?
Mr. Chairman, may I take care of a housekeeping matter?
Yes.
So we've been monitoring attendance, and I didn't hear an audible response from two members who I believe have been present through the whole meeting. Representative Brown, could I get you to speak up and confirm that you've been at the meeting the entire time? Or at least actually, I think you came in at 10 minutes after.
Well, I had technical difficulties, but I have been here. Yes, sir.
Thank you. And Kim Hammock, could I get you to speak up?
Yes, I've been here the whole time, and I've been very impressed with all of the information that's been reported. It's great work that DYS has been doing.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Thank all of you for taking the time out during this time to meet today. Is there anything else that needs to be brought before the board at this time? Hearing no further business, the board is adjourned, and be safe until we meet again.